What's up, YouTube? It's Joe Catchpolia sitting on the couch making some money investing in fractional real estate online as usual. Today I'm looking at another property on Mogul. This is their newest offering. It's a short-term rental in Houston. If you remember, didn't you can look in the playlist. I've done a previous video. I bought a piece of this one a little while ago. From them, it's the Axelrod. They're using all names from that show, Billionaire. I should have realized that sooner. They're pretty open about that. They mentioned it on their webinar. I think it's kind of funny. It goes in line with the name Mogul and honestly, I don't know. It's to me, it worries me a little bit the how much of they're just trying to push that like you're really making money investing with them type of thing. But at the same time, there are a couple of aggressive young guys, and I kind of um, maybe if I was starting something like this when I was their age, I would have done that same sort of thing. I'm not sure. But anyway, I think it's a little bit funny. I thought I'd mention it. But so this one is the WAGs. One of the things that I don't think that we've done yet on this channel is have the benefit of looking at a property that's just relatively close to other ones that we looked at. So this is Houston. It's a market that I like a lot. I'm not going to do the full digging into the market because I did it for when I did the Axelrod video. I think I also touched on it a little bit different when I did the one of their other properties. I think it's the Krakow, which is another short-term rental in Houston. So one of the things, even though they are picking markets that I really like, I'm definitely not going to buy big chunks of all their properties if they're very, very similar. I might get a little piece of each one that I like, but I don't want to have, one of the benefits that we get from these fractional real estate investing sites is that you get some diversification. And so I don't want to go and then just get this completely concentrated portfolio with them. Um, as I've mentioned, I really like some of the deals that they've done. This one, it's 16.4% IRR. It's actually they're calculating a higher IRR than they did on this other one. They did a little bit of finagling with numbers though, and I'm going to get into that in a minute. I'm just going to go through real quickly a couple of things. Um, that some of the basic due diligence that we do. One thing that I wanted to make sure I've pointed out before, maybe everybody who is not as old as me already knows this, but if you right click on these pictures and search with Google Lens, it's the easiest way to find the addresses on properties if they don't give you one. Now this one they do when they give you the analysis tab, but when I was looking at this before when they just had the properties. I couldn't find it. But then also too, it's an easy way to find some of their other listings. And so, you can search that and search, the name of whatever platform it is. And so, one of the things I think uh, that they've done a little bit is set my expectations really high. I think if you watch the Axelrod video, I was pretty excited about that property. And I think this one's just a little bit less exciting of a property. If you look through, this is an older property, but like the backyard, it's just, fantastic. And part of it might be the pictures, but, nice big pool where this one, they have a pool, but it's a much, much tighter space. Um, they're at different price points in the market, so these aren't directly competing with each other. The Axelrod is for 12 guests, and I think what do they have on here? I'm gonna move that. Um, this one I think they're doing, yeah, just accommodating six. So it's not like they're directly competing with each other, but this one just, the overall feel is a little less nice. And I guess part of it is, my experience with short-term rentals is just those bigger, nicer properties that can accommodate really large groups tend to do better. But so that's, I did find their, uh, oh, this is just actually, what is this here? Oh, this is the Zillow listing. Well, yeah, we'll take the look at that. So this is for sale for 599 900. They mentioned on that call, and this is why it's really good to get on the calls because you don't always figure all this stuff out. They have it under contract at exactly list price. They said it was competitive bidding, and so they were actually happy to get it at that price. Most of them, like the Axelrod, it was a significant discount. I can picture this one having more buyers, right? Because it's a single family home versus a duplex, and so you have more of those owner occupants that might just want to buy it and move in. And it's also the price point's a lot more accessible. It's about half as much as the other one. So I can see why, they probably did have to pay list. If you look at their track record on some other ones, I don't think that's always their MO. Um, but so when you look at this and you figure out like, well, they're just buying properties at less price. What's going on there? But at least from them, they mentioned that they had to do a little bit of negotiating just to get it there, by being the more certain buyer. So between that and looking at some of the third party sites, I think it's a fair price they're paying. I don't think they're getting a discount on this one. Um, I had actually just pulled up their bookings .com listing just to see if they had some additional pictures. And because I really wanted to see like what does that backyard actually look like, and it is. I mean, it's really just a pool. It's just much tighter. Although they do have this balcony there too, which a little bit of extra outdoor space. But this is not nearly, you know, I guess you just have a lot less people though. You just have 6 people here, so I guess it's not completely fair to share those two. Looked at the crime stop map or spot crime map. This is the one that I like to use a lot. It is not nearly as bad as what it looked like by the Krakow, but maybe it may be a tiny bit worse than by the Axelrod. And you're never going to have a perfect spot crime map like we talked about. It's what I like to do is actually look at several of the ones that pop up, see what they are. You also have to keep in mind certain things like we had a freeze, right? And so, like, if you were looking at this last week, well, there just wasn't. There were a lot less people outside. You might have a lot less. And so, one of the things as I'm trying to pick areas, I sometimes will pick a certain area and look at it over a longer period of time. Now, when you have a property like this where you have a pretty short window to buy into it, you can't do that. But like if you're buying on Lofty, for example, where those properties are sold and resold, where you can buy in anytime you want. Um, that's something that I've done a little bit and just kind of waited and taken my time and looked at that. So that's something I don't think I mentioned in the past, but it's something that you can do. So for me, this I think is not too bad. It didn't seem some of them I clicked into where it's like a fight in a bar. Something was stolen at a convenience store. So this isn't like it didn't worry me too much. I didn't think it was going to deter guests if they're looking at something similar. Flood map was good. We always do that. Like I said, I'm not going to dig into the market too much. I did want to just point out where it is relative to. So this is the Axelrod, the one I already have a piece of. I hate to keep bringing it up because you can't buy into it right now. It is sold out, but it is just in my mind. I'm comparing it, right? Like they found that deal a couple months ago in this market, and so um, real estate is always relative, right? Like you're comparing one deal to the next, and so that's why I'm doing it. So they're not too far apart, right? It's a 13-minute drive. A little bit different submarkets. I looked up uh, this one, the subject property that we're looking at, the WAGs is actually um, let's see, it's this one. It's doing slightly better. I've had a slight increase in price where the other one had a slight decrease in price over the last year. Um, not hugely different. I mean, they are very close to each other. But I just wanted to take a look and see how they compare. And that's one of the things that a lot of times because I'm not looking, I haven't had another one to compare it to in the market when I'm doing these. I'm not necessarily doing that, like where I'm picking different zip codes and trying to figure out like how is this part of town compared to another one. But if you're investing, especially if they just keep putting up these Houston STRs, um, I think in general, I'll probably want to buy some, and so getting a good sense of which ones to jump into and which ones not. To be perfectly honest, I just feel like I'm sort of drowning in opportunity, right? Like, I mean, I've been finding lots of great deals on different platforms. As far as, I find stuff on Lofty all the time I want to jump into. Uh, I already got the Axelrod on here. right? This one I think is good. There's all these new platforms, and so I can imagine at a certain point if I don't stick to being a little bit picky, um, one, as I've mentioned a lot of times, I'm just trying to experiment on these sites. Haven't devoted a whole bunch of capital to any of them. But it's going to end up changing if they keep, if they keep bringing out these deals. But I want to be a little bit patient and see how things perform. And so that's one of the things, especially, if, well, as always, if I decide to buy something or not, you don't take that to mean that you should buy it or not. You should do your own due diligence. Um, you really want to look at those deals, see if they make sense for you. But it is something that I think, one, I'm going to put a little bit bigger chunks into some of their deals, I think, because of the way that they work. Because you can't, just sort of slowly buy into them like you can on the sites that have secondary trading and whatnot. Um, but so because of that, I think I'm going to be pretty picky with the ones that they have, and hopefully they can put out more like the Axelrod. And I think that that's sort of giving away that I think this is not quite as good a deal. And I guess I'm going to just jump into that part. I did this due diligence as well, right? Where I'm walking around the street using this street view. I think we should always do that. I don't want mean to, just give that part of this really, cut it too short. But I think a lot of the things that we look at are the same or similar because it is, as far as citywide stuff, not looking into the FEMA disaster map either, because again, I've already looked at that for both of these properties. Um, that's a county-wide thing, so it's not going to change from one to the next. And so, I want to dig into though what they're doing on here. A couple of things. So, like when I notice this return being, and this is their base case, right? Like whenever they have these, and this is one thing I really like their tools, right? You got to keep moving this back and forth because to close those things, I should just put me in a different spot. Like I really like, you can switch to the bull case or the bear case, right? And it'll change their numbers. Um, I always think their bear case is not bearish enough, but that's because I'm very risk averse. But so, it's 16.4 relative to the 16.2. But you can see the cash on cash return is so much lower, right? It's 7.6 versus 11.6. And so that struck me as a little bit odd. I wanted to show you a couple of things that they're doing. So, and this is to me, because I have just experience in this underwriting and deal finding business, I know, when I worked on acquisitions teams, sometimes you have this pressure to like find deals, right? Like they have a new company, they're trying to put out deals, and it feels like maybe they're trying to make this deal work. And I'm not saying that this 16.4% return isn't real. I think that there's a decent chance they're right. Um, that's as far as whenever you're predicting the future, none of us know, right? Like no matter how good you get at this, it's always just a guess, right? But one of the things that I'd like to see is the way that they make their guesses to be consistent across the board if they're looking at similar properties, right? And so one of the things, I always want to look at the growth rates, and they've got 4%, 2%, 3.5%. And when you look at what they used on this other property, 4%, 2%, 3% appreciation versus 3.5. So they bumped up the appreciation a little bit. Now, to be fair, when we looked at the two zip codes, it is doing a tiny bit better. So maybe that's why. It's also a single family home versus a duplex. And the conventional wisdom is that, single family homes appreciate faster. Although in the last several years, that hasn't necessarily been the case in all markets. In my market, duplexes have done incredibly well, partially because of an increase in investor demand from out-of-state investors for small multifamilies here. So, and if you haven't been watching too many of my videos, I'm in San Antonio, Texas. Um, the So it looks like okay, maybe they bumped that up a little bit to make this one work, right? Because that return's not coming from the cash on cash, which means it comes from the sale, right? The other thing I wanted to look at is okay, when I'm looking at their rental income. Um, this is an Airbnb, so I check my AirDNA account. Uh, this is let me go here. This is the subject property, the one we're looking at. Um, if you look at AirDNA, It operated for 283 days in the last. I think this is doing trailing 12. So, and this is in line with what they said. They had mentioned that it was operating for most of last year, but not for. They didn't have a full year of history. And so, AirDNA predicts that it'd make 91,000, 91.3 thousand, right? Compare that to what they're doing. Okay, they're a little bit conservative. They picked a number that's lower than that, but it's not that much lower, right? Like, I mean, it's a rounding error type lower. When you look at what they did on this Axelrod, they went at 174. And if we look at the AirDNA on Axelrod, it had operated shorter and so had less revenue, but AirDNA's prediction on it was 210, right? So they went way below the AirDNA prediction for this particular property based off of that. Now, part of it might be sometimes AirDNA doesn't fully get the seasonality when you have a partial year, and so sometimes it does over extrapolate, income, like not taking fully into account so maybe that was a reason because they had less operation. It was a reason to be a little bit less aggressive. But I actually really liked that they did this here, right? That when they were underwriting the Axelrod, they picked a number significantly below AirDNA's projection for that particular property. Where now we're looking at this one and, we're already looking at a lower cash on cash return. And on top of that, it is still, you could say conservative because it's below what it had been, but it's not, it's not as conservative, right? So I wasn't super happy about that. But again, I mean, I don't think necessarily, I'm sort of punishing them because I think this was just a fantastic deal, right? So like they're kind of uh, they're being punished in my mind for not coming up with this same great deal again. And this is part of what got me excited about their platform. Looking back at some of their other deals that were already sold out, I think that they had really similar great returns. And so, come to sort of expect that. And so, if you remember, Mogul is a platform where your money is locked up until they sell. Now, they say they're going to have a secondary market solution where you'll be able to sell your shares, but it's not really clear what that's going to look like yet. And so, at the moment, I'm assuming anything I put into here is locked up for quite a long time. And so I want to just buy really great deals if that's the case, right? I want to be in a market where I think over the long term it's going to do well, and I want to and I want there to be conservative underwriting too, right? So um, all that being said, you know I would have liked to see them do the same thing here, or the fact I don't mind that they didn't, but it makes me less confident about this return, right, than I was on the other one. Again, a little bit bump up in appreciation compared to the other one. Not the end of the world. 3.5% for a market like Houston doesn't seem like a crazy estimate to me. Um, you know, Obviously we haven't had that in the last year, but over the next 10 years, is it going to average that? I think it's perfectly possible. Again, I mean, I'm really not in the prediction business. I just want to see. Um, I'm here trying to look at, okay, if you accept their estimates, how consistent are they compared to the two? Because that's all we can really do, right? It's really hard to predict exactly how something is going to perform, but it's a lot easier to predict relative performance. And this is true like when you compare two properties in the same market. It's also true when you compare two different markets to each other, right? Like you can look at certain aspects of the investments and figure out like which one of these should do better over the next period of time. Now, we don't know what's going to happen in the macro economy. We don't know what's going to happen with interest rates, and so it's possible that their numbers are way off. But when you compare one to the other, the relative performance you'd expect to be similar, right? You'd expect to be able to get that a little bit better. And even that, you're not going to predict with 100% accuracy, but I find that it is significantly easier to do that than it is to actually peg a number and be right about it. And so that's what I'm always trying to do, right? I'm always trying to compare markets. I'm trying to compare the actual investments, and I'm just trying to make the best decision that I can based on my goals and what I'm doing. And that's, I'm trying to just share some of the stuff that I'm looking at. But so the other thing that they did here, they talked about, okay, they have an interest only loan, and that's what we did here, right? We had an interest only loan, And so it just shows interest payments only. The and so this is me back on the Axelrod, right? And so uh, I don't know why their principal is off on this one. What did I do? Did I do that? I might have accidentally done that. Oh, that doesn't really look like it. Um, it's just their interest payment. That's the amount of payment per year. It's not actually showing your total principal. But so, it's just a block, right? Where this you'd expect it to change, but these are interest only payments and they have that. And so that's why, if you saw the video I did yesterday, about, why they like interest only loans, I did a much deeper discussion on why that is and why you might want it versus not. But so that's what they're doing. So when I came over here, I know that they have an interest only loan on this. And so this looks really funny, right? Like what exactly are they doing? And why did the payment go up, right? Like what's happening here? Well, this is what's happening. Uh, they have this little toggle, and you can see on this one it's not clicked, but they're assuming, okay, in what is this, year 4, year 5, we're going to do a cash out refinance, right? So we're going, it doesn't look like they're taking, what are they taking out? Let's see. New loan, yeah, they're cashing out 114,000 in year 5, right? And so why would they do that, right? What's the point of this, right? Um, the main thing, well, one, they're assuming, let's see, do they have a different rate with their refinance? I think that they do. Yeah, so they're assuming a lower interest rate. And then, but and I think, so that helps their total number a little bit. But, and is it terrible to assume in the next 5 years that you're going to have a lower rate? I think that's not so, it's not a crazy assumption, but it's not one that I want to bank on, right? The reason we get long-term debt is because, you can't really count on this, right? So this is a little bit speculative already. Um, Switching it to an amortizing loan, and that's why your interest payments start going down. Not sure why that decision is made, right? Maybe because it helps move the interest rate down a little bit more. But the big thing is by taking this cash out earlier, that's, I think, what's really juicing their IRR, right? Because the quicker that you get some of your cash back, the better your returns. And so if they're able to do a refinance in year 5, you'd expect a better internal rate of return than if you're holding it, for 10 years. The other thing, oh, I don't know why that just went away. Um, so, that's what I mean by like they're pulling out all the stops trying to make this deal look basically as good as the other deal, which I just think it's probably not as good a deal. Now, does it mean it's a bad deal? Is it to, 7.6% cash on cash yield? It's not terrible. It's better than what we saw on most of the collab properties. It's better than, as just a cash on cash, it's way better than what you're seeing on like the arrived homes, better than all the ones that we see on ARC 7. So, if they're able to hit these returns like they say, which so far they are on the Axelrod, but, they've only had like a month and a half of performance. Um, but and that's why, again, that's why this is an experiment, right? I'm not putting a ton of money into these yet. I want to see how they go, but this isn't a terrible return. They're just trying to hit the higher IRR total, and they're, by doing I think that doing a refinance to increase your returns is a perfectly good strategy. To plan on doing one just to make your deal look a certain way, I don't love that, right? And so that's one of the things. This is one of the first times I've been pretty disappointed in how they've underwritten a property. Because one, I think they're less conservative than they were on the other one. Maybe we're being a little bit more aggressive, although, like I said, there may be some reasons why they are. But creating this assumption here, and you can get rid of that, right? You can get rid of that, and then so it switches to just interest only. And that's what is great about their site, is that you can, all of these tools can help you. If you don't agree with what they've assumed, you can change them. And so, okay, that changes it to 12.9%. I think we can change, let's see, I don't think you change them here. I think you change these. um, I think you can change their growth rates per year too. Oh yeah, but by just per year. Can I edit these? So you can change that. It flows through, and then you get a little bit less return, right? And so that's what's kind of cool about this is they've given you the tools. And as far as I can tell, everything that I've tested kind of works the way I think it does. And again, I mean, that's what these guys, like I've mentioned before, more than I think any of the other platform operators really speak my language from being like from the finance background in real estate. I think that all of these tools that they're giving you make a lot of sense, and you can mess around with them a little bit. Now, why did we end up with? Oh yeah, and so I love this break-even analysis, right? Because this is why real estate is a long-term hold, right? Because there's closing costs and disposition costs, and both purchase and sale, so both sides, right? One, they always have a very low broker fee baked into their sale. I don't know why they're doing that, but they do that across the board. And I think maybe they only pay buyer's agents and they're not being represented. But I'm really not sure what they're doing there. Um, or maybe they act as their own agent and they don't charge. Actually, I think when I looked into it, that might be what they're doing, but I'm not positive. So you might want to look into that if this is, it could be like, if you change that to 6%, right? Oh, can I not change that? Yeah, I can. Okay. Change that to 6%. And how much does that change? Yeah, it doesn't change your total, your IRR too much, but it changes it a little bit. It doesn't because it's pretty far out in time, but it does change your break even analysis quite a bit, right? It adds 5 months to the time it takes to break even. But so, that's not terrible. Oh, let me go back to their assumptions though. I don't think that should change. Yeah, it shouldn't change their break even analysis because their refi is after the break even. Um, but if you look at this other one that they did, the first one, the Axelrod, when we look at their break even analysis, it's 30 months, right? And that's for a couple of reasons. The main one is just the higher cash on cash return. Um, I don't know. It doesn't seem like they actually factored into it that they got a discount on it. Um, I don't remember though, but that's something, this is what I really like though. Is you're not just given one number to say, hey, this is what it's going to do. You're given what their underwriting is and what they expect, but you have to keep in mind this is them projecting, right? And they're making guesses and they're making assumptions. And, unfortunately, uh, this property makes me think they're really trying to hit certain numbers, right? I mean, it is, um, they are very uh, forward about telling you, oh, our properties yield X and our total returns are Y. That's something they talk about all the time. So they're really proud of their ability to find these good deals. But I think at the same time, they're also feeling pressure to find more deals, right? And it's a tough market to find deals in that work with the high interest rates, right? And that is one thing that they're doing a great job of is getting, pretty cheap debt for what they're doing. Yeah, I mean they've got a 6.99% loan on this one. Um, it's actually significantly below what they have on the Axelrod. Yeah, 7.875. And so they're doing a good job with their debt. It seems like so my only real complaint is not that this isn't a good deal because it is. If it's at 7.6 and your total IRR is really closer to 12 or something, or maybe it gets higher because they are able to do the refi. Um, I don't think it's necessarily bad, but it's not as good as the one. It doesn't look like it's going to end up, even though this number is higher. I don't think it's as good of a deal as this deal, right? The underwriting's not quite as conservative with the rental income. This one you didn't have to do any kind of a refi to hit that number. So I think at the moment, I don't think I'm going to buy any of this. I know they're doing if you buy, well, yeah, I think you had to be on their webinar to get that deal where if you buy 5K of it, you get 250 in the crack out, which is, it's I like it, but at the same time, I think I'm just going to be patient and see what they put out next. I'd like to get some, like I said, a little bit more diversification if they have a good property in another market. Um, and again, I own a little piece of two of their properties now, a really small piece of one, and 5K in one, and I think 500 in the other. Um, is that right? Yeah. And so, I want to see how these perform for a little bit. I want to really, like I said, I mean, we're experimenting here, right? And so, as much as I'm still tempted to buy some of this one, I think I'm going to pass on it. I'm going to see what their next deal that comes up is. Um, I don't hate it. I'm a little bit worried that it looks like they're reaching a little bit, right? Like that they're having to, um, just be a little bit more aggressive with assumptions. The biggest one really just being that refi assumption, right? Like I don't like that you have to do that to get to the, like I'd rather, assume we're using the debt that we start with for the whole hold period. And if we get to refinance in the future and it boosts our return significantly, that's fantastic. But I don't want it to have to be that way to get to the number that I'm looking for. I think that's really all I want to talk about for this deal today. I know a couple of you had mentioned in the Discord. Oh, by the way, please like and subscribe. And also, if you haven't joined the Discord, it's just the Fractional Real Estate Investors Discord. I have a link in the description below. It's just something I put together so that we can talk about deals on any platform. Because I know a lot of us are invested across multiple platforms. Um, but yeah, I know several of you were actually waiting for this next deal to come out from them. And so if you have questions or if you guys want to talk about it, I'm open to, having some discussion or doing a follow up if there are specific issues that you want to talk about with it. However you want to do it, my goal is really to have a collaborative approach to attacking all these platforms, right? Like I think that so far I've been really happy with Mogul, but this is one of the first times they've done something that make me a little nervous. It just makes me think they are feeling a little pressure to put out deals that look a certain way, and I'd rather them just uh, you know do make them all look more similar, and the assumptions look similar, and then I can compare the deals myself more easily. And like I said, I mean, they give you the tools and it's really easy to just hit the toggles. But I don't understand why they would not just leave the same base case for both, especially it's a pretty similar property in the same market. I mean, they are different price points. It's a duplex versus a single family home, but they're both short-term rentals, 15 minutes apart from each other. So anyway, now I really think I'm done. Until next time, I will keep making mistakes so that you don't have to.